This episode has been brought to you from the DGMS studios, home of Don't Get Me Started, Lethal and Mully Live and Surftown. Found at Spotify, Amazon, Apple Music and wherever you listen to your podcast. Hello and welcome to Don't Get Me Started. It's the mother of all podcasts with Keith and Lee. Hi, I'm Lee.
And I'm Keith.
I'd like to welcome to the studio Keith Mully McMullen. How are you, mate?
You know, when we first started this podcast, you would welcome me with a little jab, like, what are you doing with tight pants on, or what are you doing with pointed shoes or something like that? And just lately, every time I come in here, you're exuding warmth and care. What's going on?
I remember back then, it was your idea. You did want to be abused for some reason. I don't know why.
I don't think so.
You did, Mully. And I thought, well, that season's come and gone.
Oh, thank God for that.
Now, talking about seasons, we're looking out the window and it's pouring down with rain. And I remember yesterday you saying, gee, Lee, this is so subtropical weather we've got at them. It's awful, Mully. Where's the sun gone?
Behind clouds. I don't know if you've heard the news, but this is quite a weather event that we're going through.
Yes.
Trees are down, roads are cut.
Yep.
Massive, wouldn't say massive, but significant local flooding in low-lying areas and creeks, etc. More to come.
Oh, interrupting my life. I'm only joking. I'm very happy. It reminds me of home anyway.
Does
a
it?
Nice grey sky.
And home would be the old place. It's not home anymore, you told me.
No, it's not home anymore. I was waiting for you to pick me up on that. You did it on cue. Well done, mate.
This is your new home, and normally the skies are clear and the skies are nice and sunny and everything. Bluebirds are flying through the gum trees and koalas are tweeting and multiplying. The world is good.
Mate, we better stop this because we're getting older. We're talking about the weather, and next thing we'll be talking about is our ailments. Oh, how's your hip, mate? Oh, my back's playing up a bit. Oh, what medication you're on? Anyway, we did a little video of us last week, I think it was, and you did say to me, Lee, I think we should be the voice of the podcast and not the face of our podcast, but we're still going to get through it. We're still going to do it. It was an eye-opener. Mm-hmm. It did make me laugh. You made me laugh. But I did that exercise for us to see what we looked like on video. What do you think? Do you think we looked okay?
No, I don't think we did. I thought we need two things here. We need a little bit of visual grooming. I now know why you see the people who are going to go on television being powdered up. So we probably need a little bit of tidying up. And also we need to some training on how to hold back our facial expressions. Yeah. Like, don't go wiping the eyes if it's getting watery. If your nose is itchy, don't give it a little poke and all this sort of stuff. So you have to be a little bit more wooden.
Self-conscious, you think?
Yeah, self-conscious, that'll do.
Oh, but, mate, it was fun. I enjoyed it. It was a good exercise, do you think?
Yeah. And definitely have a shave beforehand.
Yeah, well, I did after.
That's helpful.
And I put a comb through my hair.
Well, yeah, after is helpful because the cameras are not on. So that doesn't count, does it, really?
No.
But anyway, listen, I had a text from Danny in Athens.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
How you going, Danny?
He was pretty stoked that we gave him a shout-out. It's a pleasure, mate, because, you're such a faithful listener and a really good guy. And the people that have been listening to us faithfully for a long time, like Denny and Ross and your mate Gary down in Brisbane.
Gaza, a big shout out to Gary. How are you, mate?
All the others up in Scandinavia land who listen to us faithfully, and Bulgaria, etc. So, all you folk that are listening and tuning in, we just appreciate it. And we hope you're well, living under fair skies and living in interesting times.
Here. But we've got more listeners. We have one from Fenton in Michigan.
Oh, really? The Americans coming on board big time.
Yeah, that's
excellent. Well, they're probably sick of the eternal strife that their country's going through.
Let's not go there.
And they want to tune into some Aussie sunshine. I can't blame them.
Well, I'm looking out the window. There's no sunshine, mate.
Come on down here. We've got great beaches. We've got great animals. Okay, some of them can cause you harm, even death, but we'll teach you how to get around them. We've got terrific beer. Our football is interesting. The guys go out and play it without padding. It's all here. So all you Americans, come on down. And if you do, come and look up Keith and Lee on Don't Get Me Started, and we'd love to host you and look after you.
For sure. Now, talking about the beach, how'd that go? The Festival of Surfing's complete now?
That's a wrap. That's finished. Yeah,
How'd it go?
It went really well. They didn't have the best waves in the world, but they had waves that were contestable. Last year, the waves were very, very small. They were too small, actually. The social aspect of it went very well. The program went very well. Everybody was happy. One of the great things that happens at this type of event is not just the surfing action in the ocean. It's a social event. It's a time to catch up with old friends, because a lot of guys and girls love to come to these events to catch up with people that they know from different parts of the coast. So it's a tribal gathering, if you like.
Now, you were posting some good videos. Now, what's your Insta?
Surftown the podcast, because as you know...
Was it underscore? Is it Surftown underscore?
Yes,
podcast?
surf_town_ the podcast. Check it out. I interview various interesting people. I have news. I have little short stories and have discussion. I have a really good discussion in mind. I want to talk to a very interesting guy about surf culture, which is quite a vast topic, really. You know, you've got magazines, you've got movies, you've got fashion, you've got style. So it's something that I want to explore with a very knowledgeable mind.
Excellent.
I like people like you, Lee, who can think a little bit differently, either to the right or to the left or outside the box or inside the box. Sometimes inside the box is okay. You don't always have to get out of it, because there's a lot in there, and go to the different corners of the box, see what you can find.
It's interesting because as we evolve in our podcast, we don't need some of the equipment that we first had in the beginning. And of course, you want to move them on. And a lady came in this morning named Kristen, and she's a dog handler. And she's starting off a podcast.
A dog handler or a dog trainer?
Dog trainer stroke handler. So she was pretty interested in our studio, and she was saying, "Oh, do you rent this out?" And I said, "Absolutely." And she goes, "I've got people that love to come in. Do you do the whole package?" And I said, "Yeah, we do." So
yeah, who knows? Well, I saw her as I came in. She was leaving. Very lovely person. But that's the great thing about podcasting. It's the people that you meet, the people that you talk to. It's a great vibe because people want to share their stories. Essentially, we're storytellers. I don't know, Lee, are we storytellers or are we conversationalists?
I think we're conversationalists.
You know, which is the topic that we want to tackle this morning, isn't it? Is the art of conversation dead?
Oh, it's an interesting one, Mully. And when you mentioned it, my mind went off in all directions.
Did it?
Now, for me, all I can say is the art of conversation dead. With digital communication, it may seem like it's dead or dying, but I think it's more accurate to say that conversation has evolved and adapted through that than dead or dying. So instead of a disappearing conversation or something that has simply reconfigured itself and adapted to the digital age. So for me, evolution, not extinction.
So wait a minute. So you're saying conversation has evolved to be an electronic one?
Yeah, and reconfigured itself.
So you could be talking to somebody through, say, your social media app, like WhatsApp.
Absolutely.
There's a conversation going.
So smartphones and online platforms, it's led to a shift in how people communicate with, like you're just saying, texting, emails, social media. For myself, it's more important to listen to a good conversation. A good conversation requires active listening and the ability to truly hear and understand what that other person is saying. Through social media, through the texting and the emails, you are not listening.
Yes, it's hard sometimes to interpret exactly what the person has intended with the words that they have sent you. You can misunderstand, can't you?
Oh, absolutely. And when you first said on the beginning, has the art of conversation died or is it dead? Define art. So I've looked it up. It's very interesting. So it says art, the expression or application of human creative skill and imagination. Now, there's a heap more there, but that was the first line. And that spoke to me too, because it's an art.
Now, this is really interesting, and this is what I was thinking when we mooted this being a possible topic for this conversation, for this podcast episode. And I was thinking back to the time when people didn't have stimulus like radio, television, and now we've got all the social media through the internet, etc. People used to gather together and they would entertain each other through conversation. So you'd have an evening planned, say it was a night where you didn't have much to do the next day, but you wanted to entertain yourself. So you'd invite somebody who can tell good stories, somebody who's travelled, somebody who's a scientist perhaps, somebody who's a philosopher, maybe a poet, somebody who can play the piano, somebody who can play a violin. And people in those days were relatively well educated in terms of the art, if you like. They had broader interests that they could do these things. Like playing the piano was almost mandatory in a lot of families. Somebody had to play the piano. So these people brought something that would entertain, and that's artistic in a sense. It's like, oh, Keith, you've written a new poem. Please read it.
Well,
and people would have to listen, of course, and they'd either love it or hate it. But, well, what do you think about that, Alfred? Do you think Keith's poem was entertaining? It was fabulous. And the other person sitting across the room thinking, what a load of crap, that was the worst thing I've ever heard.
Well, that's the art of conversation, the art, which really spoke to me. And in a world that can often feel disconnected, the art of conversation is crucial. This is what I think, for fostering empathy, building strong relationships and creating a sense of community. But another thing for me, it also seems people have little to no interest in connecting with people where there seems to appear nothing for them, no potential benefit or outcome.
That's a very sharp point. And isn't that terrible?
Because I feel in this day and age, absolutely, because through the social media aspect, where, Mully, you and I were young once and we had to go out and we had to talk to people.
Oh, yes, you did, yeah.
We had to converse.
There's always alcohol involved most of the time. Down the pub, I'll bring the six-pack. Oh, I'm bringing a carton of wine. Cigarette, Lee? Oh, thanks.
And we've been in conversations many, many times over many, many years, many times of the day. And in the end of whether it's going to be a good conversation or not. For me, when I talk to people, it's going downhill because they're fighting over the details of the past. They keep going on about the past. You want to move forward. They're arguing with other people's perception of life. They're repeating the facts. They're repeating questions. And they do it in a harsh vocal tone, eventually yelling. Then there is no art there. There is no conversation. I hope that you're enjoying the podcasts and the content that we're bringing to you each week. I want to take a moment to invite you to support the show. Your contributions help us continue creating high-quality episodes, bringing in exciting guests and exploring the topics you love. Every bit helps, whether it's a small donation or signing up for our Patreon account. By supporting us, you're not just helping keeping the lights on, you're becoming part of our community and helping us grow. To show our appreciation, we offer exclusive perks, behind-the-scenes content, and so much more for our supporters. So if you love what we do and you want to see us thrive, please consider signing up at buzzsprout.com/don't get me started. Support the show. Thank you for being part of our journey, and let's keep the conversation going.
One of the things that I think is tragic about the time that we're living in, which is 2025, that people don't have a basic grasp of general knowledge. When there was a time when general knowledge was taught at school in Australia under the title of social studies. So you were taught about Argentina, you were taught about the Northern Hemisphere, you were taught the periodic table, who invented it, you taught the amount of planets in the solar system.
Is this the teacher coming out in you?
This is a person who likes interesting people, because we don't have a base of general knowledge that we can draw from. So if you go into a company where there's no television, no electronic stimulus at all, and people are relying on themselves to entertain themselves for the evening, you would want to have somebody there who can give you a good, interesting conversation. Like we're funneled by the media, which we all are addicted to a narrow view on things, and we're being dumbed down all the time. You can go and, like one of the things when I was teaching, I did a little test. I said to some of the kids, I'd call them aside privately, and I'd say, can you tell me how many minutes in quarter of an hour? And some of them would think, and say, 25.
Really?
I'd say, all right, thank you very much. 25. Like they're just thinking, oh, that's quarter of 100. The question was quarter of an hour. And of course, the answer is 15. Now, I would say on average, and I would do that quite a bit, I'd say on average out of 10 kids, 2 would say 15. And I'd teach them general knowledge before. I'd have a 5-minute little presentation of general knowledge, and I'd ask them different questions. Can anybody tell me 2 countries in Africa? They couldn't. Can you tell me what is the prime meridian? Just general stuff. And I wouldn't just make it geography. I'd do a little bit of research and draw from science, politics. Another one here in Australia. Does anybody know where the Federal House of Parliament is?
Or the capital of Australia. They always say Sydney.
Yeah. Do you know how many houses are in Parliament? Do you know how it works? Do you know who our Prime Minister is? Do you know who the leader of the opposition? Kids don't have general knowledge. Now, sadly, a lot of adults these days don't as well. Anyway, I'm off the topic.
So let's get back to the
Don't
topic.
get me started on it, Lee. Jeez.
Get it back. So as I was talking before about I can see where the conversation's going bad. I can also see and hear when you have a conversation, the art of conversation. One would always be like I always do with you, Mull. I lead with a compliment. Keith, how are you today? Keith, you're looking well. Keith, what have you done? Have you put some moisture on? Your face is glowing. That's one. That should always be the way because it makes you feel good.
Yeah, and I like what you're saying there because who doesn't want to be complimented for
Absolutely.
a start? And then, of course, the ball is immediately in my court. And depending on how I respond, enables you to pick it up and go in another different direction, but still be able to feed it back to the person that you are conversing with.
That's a good answer. Because the second one for me is you always be kind. It doesn't cost you anything. Be kind, be friendly, and have an open body language.
So you're telling me I look good because I've been using moisturiser. So you're not going to follow it up and say, geez, about time you've been looking absolutely crap lately.
No, we've got to be friendly.
You've got to be kind.
It's easy to be unkind. It's easy to tear down people than build them up. So when you walk in with a smile, try not to cross your arms. Don't let your eyes wander. Maintain eye contact. Now, that is incredible. I've always taught my children, when you shake somebody's hand, you do a firm handshake and you look them straight in the eye. And when you talk to people, they're not listening to you or they're looking away.
Isn't it disconcerting when you are talking to people and they're not listening to you?
That's what I just said, yeah.
Yeah, it's really, I'm just picking up and reiterating what you said. It's really terrible. It's unsettling. Of course, this is part of the art. Listening is so important.
It's the art. That's what I love. It's the art.
I'll give you an example. I was out surfing one day out at Tea Tree and I met this guy on the way back and I hadn't seen him before and we started talking and, of course, I was interested. Who are you? Where are you from? Blah, blah, blah. So he started telling me his life story and we must have spoke for about, 20 minutes. And all he did was talk about himself. And I was kind of trapped in it. So I stayed there. I was gracious. I listened. I would have liked to have got away from him. Anyway, then we parted and he went over and he was talking to another guy that I knew. And as I was getting ready to go home, putting the surfboard on the car, that friend came over to me and he said, you've just been talking to Patrick. And I said, yeah. Oh. And he said, Patrick reckons you're such a really interesting guy. I thought,
You never said anything.
I never said a bloody word. All I did was listen to this guy. I doubt if Patrick even knew my name, but because he had somebody who was willing to listen to him, he thought it was a wonderful conversation. Now, that's an extreme example, but it does show you how important listening is.
It is, absolutely.
What it does to the person who is conversing to notice, to see that somebody's actually taking it in.
But as you were saying, you listen. So you have to embrace that. Same as small talk, where they talk about, like we've done this morning, the weather. The weather. Or you talk about, which again, we've spoken about this morning. It was so funny. The newest Netflix shows.
Yes.
So it's conversation. It's getting that interest. The other thing for me is you've got to ask good questions.
Yes, you do.
Like we have a podcast, Noosa Now, where we get people in from Noosa and we ask them, I think, minimum 6 questions.
Yes.
But we think about those 6 questions. It makes it more palatable for them to expand out from there, and that will create more. And then in the end, what you and I, especially you, Mully, you love to have a chat, we don't really get to the end of it. You do this with Surftown. You had 20 questions. You've now scaled that back and the conversation blossoms.
Yeah, well, you leave the door open, if you like, for something to come in that's arisen during the conversation, and you can go off in a different direction. But of course, you always keep an eye on that, and you always want to bring it back to where you would like the conversation to go, or where you feel the conversation is going that somebody else is directing. That's an art too, is to dominate and to the point where you are taking the conversation where you want it to go, because you can be challenged.
The other thing is that you have to show empathy and engage in active listening. Now, you can see that on your face if you're not very empathetic.
According to my missus, I'm not very empathetic, sensitive at all. But in my defence, I just say, well, look, better than I was when I was a younger man, and I am trying.
You're trying. You are very trying, Mully. And above all, which I've got used to it now, is to keep it positive.
Yes. And what I like to do too, Lee, is throw in a curly one. Not to be a smart ass, to throw them off or put them down in any way, but to pick up on what they're talking about and throw a question in that would be from a perspective that they're not necessarily expecting, which they can handle. You know that they can. And it's going to draw a little bit more of a little bit of a spice out of it, if you like, because this is an art of entertainment, really.
Love that word, art.
It's entertaining. Back in the day, like I said, they used to invite people around who would give them a wonderful evening, and people would recite poems. I used to be able to recite this poem called The Highwaymen by Alfred Norris.
I know this one. My father-in-law loved it.
Yeah, I did too.
How funny is that?
And it's got about 24 stanzas, I think. It's in 2 parts. And I could recite about 8 stanzas. The wind was a torrent of darkness among the gusty trees. The moon was a ghostly galleon tossed upon cloudy seas. The road was a ribbon of moonlight over the purple moor. And the highwayman came riding, riding, riding. The highwayman came riding up to the old inn door. I love that setting.
Oh, mate, I've got goosebumps because that's my father-in-law used to say it to my children. Oh, my goodness, Mully, how funny.
And they would sit there and listen to it. And I'll give you the second stanza as much as I can remember. He had a French hat. No, he had a French cocked hat on his forehead, a bunch of lace at his chin, a coat of the claret velvet and breeches of brown doe skin. They fitted with never a wrinkle. His boots were up to the thigh, and he rode with a jewelled twinkle. His pistol butts a twinkle, his rapier hilt a twinkle under the jewel sky.
Oh, love it, Mully.
Who is this guy?
Oh, he's amazing.
If he just entered the room, it'd be entertainment.
Incredible.
Where did you get those boots from? Why? Why
the
is
dandy highwayman?
Why is your pistol butter twinkling? Look at his eye. Girls, over to the corner and be safe for the highwayman, because he'll come riding up to your bedroom door.
Sensational. Don't we all want to be the highwayman?
And this goes on, and I used to be able to recite more and more and more. And of course, there's a drama, it's a love story, and there's death in it, all this type of thing. But even the beginning, this dark night.
And it sets the stage.
Yes, and the cloudy sky and all this.
And you can hear the horse.
Yeah, cloppity, clippity, clop. And so, this is the art of conversation, Lee. And somebody would say, oh, look, wonderful, Keith, wonderful you've recited that. Well, what about you, Mildred? What can you bring for the evening? And she goes over and she plays, fittingly, Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. Everybody just drifts off, sits back in absolute bliss, sipping their Chardonnays. No, I didn't have Chardonnays, clarets.
Clarets. Ports.
Ports. And then as the evening of mixed company is concluded, the women go and talk about women's stuff, and the men go outside and have a cigar or light their pipe. Ah, mate, the romance of those days.
They go out and they communicate. That's the thing. Now, I've got down here, I've written 4 skills of communication. Now, I've got 3 of these. Mm-hmm. I wonder if you can pick the one where I don't really do a lot of. So the first one, obviously, as we've been talking about, is listening. Second one, speaking. Third one is reading. And the last one is writing.
You are a good listener, Lee.
Good listener.
Yes, you're a good speaker.
Good speaker.
Yeah, reading and writing. I don't know much about that with you.
Well,
writing. Yeah,
look at my nose.
I know your handwriting is bloody atrocious. Even a doctor looks.
Oh, come on! Look at it. It's Not bad. You'll be able to read that.
Even a doctor makes your handwriting look primitive.
It's the reading. Like, I don't read enough. That's the thing. If it doesn't grip me within the first 10 minutes, I'm gone.
Yeah, fair enough.
But how does that fit with you? With the listening, speaking, reading and writing? Do you think that's the 4 skills of communication?
Yeah, well, if you read, you find out things from other people. You learn things. Oh, I didn't know that. And I love that. That's why I don't read novels very much, because they'll give you a little tale. They'll give you an engrossing story where you want to keep turning the page to find out what's happening. But I like a good history book that will tell the story. Some history books will tell you in great detail the event or the times, but they won't necessarily tell you the story. This happened, and because it did happen, this was the consequence and brought about this change. And then from that change, this direction went with that person or that country. And I find that absolutely engrossing. I'm reading a book at the moment, actually.
You're not.
It's called The Story of Russia by one of my favorite historians, Orlando Firies. And he does exactly that. He says the Mongol invasion made this impression upon the Russian people. And as a result of that, it stamped this particular trait into their psyche. And they are this way because. And then when I read something like that, I go, oh, that explains so much. And I read his book about the Crimean War, and he did the same thing. And I'm just thinking, well, this is amazing.
I've got to read more, for sure. Now, the other thing I've got down here is a pathway to communication. It's called the 7 C's.
The 7 C's? Like
C, not as in oceans, but as the letter C. Now,
roll them out, Lee.
Okay, so number 1, it has to be clear. Your conversation's clear. Concise, concrete, correct, coherent, complete, and courteous.
Let's go to concrete. That sparked my interest. What do you mean? It has to be factual and not bullshit?
Yes.
Well, that's interesting, because what can be concrete for one person? Well, concrete is concrete. A fact is a fact. Yeah. But sometimes it depends on where you stand. If you get a coin and you put it in the middle of 2 people and say to them, please look at the side of that coin, tell me what you see. Now, in Australia, on one side of a coin, we have a head, figure of state, and on the other side it might be the coat of arms of the state. So 2 people looking at the coin, seeing the same coin but seeing 2 different sides and seeing 2 different illustrations. So the concrete fact could be interpreted differently by different people. But that's where the art of the conversation comes in, because you might say, okay, let's take the Cuban Missile Crisis that happened back in the 60s. You could say, well, that was justified because of what was happening in the to and fro between the 2 countries in the Cold War. Or you could say, no, it wasn't justified. That was an aggressive act that threatened the peace of the world. Sometimes now the Cuban Missile Crisis is a concrete fact. It happened. But sometimes where you stand is what you see, and that can bring in the art of the conversation. My dad used to say, you never argue about politics, religion, and what was the other one?
You know it, Mully.
No, I forgot. I might have no. Dad never mentioned sex as long as he lived. Never argue about politics, sex, and something else. I forget. I thought religion, politics, sex, and religion. Never argue about it. Over the years, I thought he's right. But if, and I say a big if, the conversation can be tempered with people who can control themselves and not go to extremes, they're 3 of the best subjects.
Well, for me, I'm looking down at them and I'm going, yeah, sometimes I'm not exactly clear and I don't complete sentences. Like I start off and go, oh, Mully, with that. Oh, and the other thing is that I just don't finish the sentence.
I find that infuriating.
Well, I do it all the time.
No, you don't. Yeah, no, I don't notice that about you at all.
Thank you, Mully. You're very kind. Well, we're getting to the end now, but I would like to put my take on what I think the art of conversation is. So I put down here, the art of conversation is a crucial aspect of human interaction that has been practiced and valued throughout history. It involves the exchange of ideas, thoughts, and feelings between individuals through a spoken language. A good conversation is not just about exchanging information, but building relationship, exploring new perspectives and learning from each other, like you said. The art of conversation requires active listening, empathy, and the ability to articulate your thoughts in a clear and concise manner.
Concrete way.
Whether it's a casual chat with a friend or a business meeting with a colleague, the ability to engage in meaningful and effective communication is essential for personal and professional success. Conversation is a crucial part of human interaction. It also allows us to connect with others, to express our thoughts and feelings, and share information. However, not everyone is naturally skilled at a conversation. Some people struggle with knowing what to say, how to keep the conversation going, or how to avoid awkward silences. This is the good news, Mully. The art of conversation can be learned and improved with practice.
Do you think they should have conversational lessons in school?
I do.
In school?
Really do.
You know, teaching kids social graces.
Yes.
And part of the social grace, of course, is how to handle a conversation.
The art of the conversation.
Yeah, well, maybe we're onto something here, Lee.
I put that out there and a couple of people come back with their thoughts. And one is they said, yes, I do think the art of conversation is dead. It's unfortunate the world of high tech has caused less conversation about important issues. Many people do converse using iPhones, computers and so on, but this is not an art. Usually it's a brief text, many abbreviation forms. The only generation that may still be using this conversation are people who are older. Growing up, I enjoyed many wonderful discussions with my parents and their friends. Other relatives also shared many stories and their views on world topics.
There you go.
So it is, in the beginning, like I said, it is evolving. It hasn't died. I think the art has died, but I think conversation, so it's been reconfigured.
Yeah. Well, I'd have to agree with that. People, of course, are still communicating.
Yeah.
I guess the conversational tone or the content and style has changed. So the artistic side, you know, the romantic side that I illustrated earlier, where somebody recites a poem, somebody has a little song that they can sing, somebody plays a piano, somebody tells their latest story, a little anecdote here or there. Maybe that's a romantic view that I have that is gone and it's replaced by different content and different styles. So conversations are still happening, whether it's elevated to an art that we can think is sublime or not, it's a different thing.
The last one that I got here, it says a lot of people today don't listen. They may appear to be present in the conversation, but they're really either just waiting for the speaker to finish so they can speak, or they're busy thinking about what to say next. In most cases, it's really a question of a lack of listening skills. I could go on and on, but I think that sort of sums it up too, in a way, about the conversation.
I'm just thinking as you're reading that, Lee, you have shows like the Johnny Carson show. You have television shows where people bring in guests and they talk. Parkinson, all these different people. That's televised conversation, isn't it? And maybe people have been feeding on that over the last 30, 40, 50 years on television, because they're not really conducting that sort of thing in their own homes themselves.
Now, we had a podcast before when I think it was, is technology good or bad? Now, I think as you or me, we said that a long time before internet hit our lives, we would sit together at Smoko and everybody would talk. Mm-hmm. They would share their stories. Mm-hmm. They would be about the weekend, the golf, the surf, the footy, talking about a wave. I remember sitting there going, I'm out my league because I knew nothing about this. Now, you sit at the Smoko, everybody is on their phone.
Yeah, I know, it's tragic. I was in a coffee shop recently and there was grandparents there. They were clearly well into their 70s and they're both on their phones. Maybe they've had 50 years of marriage and they're sick of each other and, you know, they're being stimulated on listening to Don't Get Me Started.
Yeah, well, so
can't blame them.
Yeah. Well, leave for the money live.
But they were.
Bring it on. I'm just going to finish with this bit, which I find very important. People who listen are far more likely to exceed in their careers.
Oh, interesting point.
Their relationship flourishes.
Good point also.
They learn faster. They are exponentially more likely to see opportunities as they engage in conversations that have potential to grow into amazing exchanges of information and ideas.
Wow, what a good point to finish on. I'm going to take a copy of that home.
You can, Molly, and you probably won't be able to read my writing, though.
But that means if I act on that, I can improve myself.
Oh, mate, you don't need any improvement.
No, thank you, Lee. You've started off with a compliment and finished one.
I'm going to finish one. Molly, as always, it's been amazing to have you here. I love our chats. And as always, I'll leave you the last word.
Lee, you're an absolute gem. I enjoy coming here into our studio and having our conversations as much as what you seem to, and thank you for that. I would just like to say to everybody, thanks for tuning in again. Until next week, we love you all, and it's hooroo from me. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Tell everybody. So, goodbye.